So, we're going to talk tonight about the level of being, which is obviously a very psychological talk. Where do we begin? So, thanks, Sonny. So there exists we live in two realities, yeah? We live in internal reality and an external reality. That becomes really obvious, for instance, when you think about like your dreams, which is an internal reality. The mind and the way of thinking, which is an internal reality. Yeah. And then we have the external reality, which is here, the physical world. Yeah. And we always live between two. Most people don't really fully accept an internal reality. They mostly just accept like the sort of run-of-the-mill, when we're talking about things like science and everything, pretty much just sees everything as an external reality. And anything internal, they try to externalize it. Meaning if you talk about science, you talk about the brain, they'll say, oh, that's electrical signals jumping around on your grey matter. So you externalize something that's actually internal. You understand what I mean? That's how they interpret dreams. That's how they talk about the psychology. You understand what I mean? When you start talking about interesting things like fate, like why people are in love, if you understand. Hey, guys, come in. You might need to get... Yeah, okay. Hey, Paolo. ¿Qué pasa? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
How you going? Come in, take a seat. So, yeah. Yeah, as I was saying, we have an internal reality and an external reality. As I said, and everything that's going on normally is the normal world, they try to exteriorize that. So any internal reality I have, a dream, etc., they try to explain it in exterior ways. When I talk about the beauty of love, the fact of like reincarnation, that two people have a connection that actually passes from life to life, yeah, they just go, oh no, it's scientific, it's like childbearing hips, you know, or it's what do you call it? It's like animalistic instincts, you know, she's just got the right form. Any man would go for her, really. Do you know what I mean? But then that doesn't really make sense when you sort of see different cultures, you know what I mean? And everyone looks completely different. You know, like what's very attractive in one culture is actually different to another. Do you know what I mean? I remember that when I first went to Europe and everyone was just totally different. You know what I mean? Or remember when all the African kids were coming to school and they just looked so different to us. Do you know what I mean? This is completely different. So this is nonsense. But so what they're doing there is they're trying to make an external reality of something that's internal. So it's actually an internal reality. Your way of thinking, the life that you live, this is an internal reality. So let's talk a little bit about the external reality. So in Gnosis, this external reality, the external state, we refer to as the horizontal line of life. Yeah? And it is just that. It's the materialistic life. That's all. It begins when we're born and then it finishes when we die. Yeah? This could be whatever. I mean, like, it depends who you are, isn't it? I mean, if you're a famous rock musician that's 28, is that right? Is that when all the rock musicians die? Yeah. 27. So if you're a famous rock musician, it's 27. You know what I mean? If you're what is it, a Taurus or a Capricorn, it's 101 or something. You know, there you go. You know, so you know, and what it is, yeah, it's like this. I'm born. I go through my various situations. Yeah, I grow up. I go to school, or I go to homeschool. All right, kids? Yeah. Whatever. I maybe I get an education, or I just go straight to the workforce, get a job, fall in love, hopefully, you know, have some children, you buy a house. That's a fantasy nowadays. I just thought I'd mention it just in case if you remember what that was like. And then, you know, you sort of continue on, get some debts, midlife crisis, new wife, etc. And this just sort of goes on until you die. You know what I mean? And that's a life. You know what I mean? And they've made lots of movies about that. It's a wonderful life, isn't it? Now, that's great. That's the exterior reality. That's the materialistic life that everyone lives. And it's very important that it has a beginning and an end. I've heard tell that there is a man who's trying to live immortally, and he's not just doing it. He's doing it on Netflix, which is the only place to do it. Yeah. And he's you seen that guy? And he's doing all sorts of ice baths and he's injecting his face with special like jellyfish venom and Well, I mean, it's not Botox. It's like some other type of Botox. It's just what Botox is anyway. But it's like this whole thing. And he said, I'm going to live forever. No, he's not. He's going to die like the rest of us. He'll probably have a heart attack stepping off a train or something. You know what I mean? Like, a reality check, man. People die falling out of bed. Come on. So, anyway, that's the reality. Now, but if that was it, then our lives would be exceptionally boring and the meaning of life would be horrible. I don't know if have you guys seen the movie The Meaning of Life by Monty Python? Yeah. It's a cracker, eh? And I love at the end, it's like, right at the end when they finish, they do this whole film and it's just completely inappropriate sketches one after the other. And then right at the end, John Cleese just sits there and just goes, well, that was all just filler. And he said, the real meaning of life is, go out, get pissed, have a good time, and that's it. And you remember that? I thought that was quite funny because it was quite accurate. It's like they just play all this stuff because, it was all just a waste of time. Anyway, just do whatever. And yeah, sure, a life that has no internal reality, that's what it is. As Socrates told us, a life unexamined isn't worth living. And what you have to understand by that is you sort of see the rates of depression at the moment are really high. And it's because of that. Because if people start to examine their life, do you understand? Then everyone says, no, what are you doing examining your life? No, you just live it, mate. You just scroll it away. That's it. That's all you got to do. Just eat some good food and call it a day. If someone starts asking if there's a God or not, whoa, calm down there, my friend. So this lecture more, therefore, is about the internal reality. So our internal reality, or our level of being, that the level which we actually function on, is the opposite. It goes all the way up and all the way down. Our psychology and our internal reality can go to the depths of the abyss and beyond, and can go right up into the supposed heavens. It can continue on and on and on. This is the reality of our interior, and this is the true reality in every moment. They actually meet at a point. This is the moment right here. We'll talk about that later. So this internal reality, this internal state is interesting because usually people, when they talk about, when people talk about that exterior reality, I don't know if this is just an Australian thing because I'm brought up here, so I'm biased, right? But people usually spend their time sort of complaining about their lives. I don't know if that's an Aussie thing, if that came from England, they brought it across on a ship, complaints. But generally speaking, people just sort of complain. Like you come to Australia and everyone's like, it's so hard, mate, the bloody government. And, growing up, it's hard. They don't make things like they used to. We don't, and we sort of have all these things, and we often sort of blame certain situations. There's a really out there movie that I can't recommend you watch because it's just so weird, called Mr. Nobody. Assuming no one's seen it. It's got that guy from 30 Seconds to Mars. What's his name? The bloody...
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto's in it. Yeah, before he was much of an actor. Or he isn't now. Let's not go there. But there's a movie about that. He plays a guy, he's like 100 or something, and he's trying to remember what he did in his life, and he sort of experiences all of the tangents. So he can't remember if he went with that girl or not, so he experiences both, and they show his life, they show his life sort of like that, like every single choice he made, he could have been a different person, do you know what I mean? Sort of this intertwining, like keeping going off. It's a cool concept, but it ended up just being really confusing, obviously, you know what I mean? But, anyway, we often do that. We say, I missed my chance, There was that lovely woman, she passed me by. Or, and this is obviously something that happens usually in hindsight, if you understand. Like there's this whole thing of, I should have bought a house when I was 12, you know what I mean? Because now I'd be able to afford a house if only I bought one when I was 12 years old, You know what I mean? I'm making a joke, but I mean like that. We sort of look back and we go, this is what's created the person that I am today. Yeah? And we look at the circumstances. And often we say that, like if a person was brought up in a really difficult circumstance, if they were brought up in a rough area with, a high crime rate, etc., then the assumption is that they are going to be a product of their upbringing and that they're going to therefore be a rough person, etc., etc. Do you understand what I mean? And so we sort of say if someone comes from a low level of society, they're going to have a low level of being. This is not actually correct because it's internal. And thanks, darling, good cup of tea. what actually creates our external reality, our level of being, is the internal reality. Sorry. What creates the external, the horizontal, what actually dictates that is actually the internal reality. Yeah, and people, I guess, they're sort of beginning to see this more and more. There's this whole secret thing in manifestation. That's not really what I'm talking about tonight. But what I mean to say is that you can take a person, for instance, a person who has, let's say, for instance, a drug habit, or, problems like that, financial difficulties, etc., and you can take them out of their situation. You can take them out of, what's the roughest area around here? Nimbin? Sorry?
Nimbin's probably a good
Nimbin, there you go. So you can take the guy, he's living on the street, not living in one of the nice houses out the back of Nimbin, but he's on the street in Nimbin, you know what I mean? He's looking really rough. You can pick him up, you can give him a wash, you got to get a good scrub, pick him up, give him a wash, give him a nice new set of clothes, give him a brand new car, and then you can go and set him in, give him a house here in Bangalore. In Bangalore. Bangalore. Yes, as my friend used to say that. Bangalore. With the pinky. Bangalore. You can give him a nice place in Bangalore. And, nice house, like one of those nice 100-year-old weatherboards. Really lovely houses. I love fixing those houses. And, all that sort of jazz. Lovely house. We've got warm floorboards in the mild winters. And air conditioning in the mild summers. And you can do all that, right? And yet he will retain inside himself. And you can do all that, and then within a few weeks, he might be right back in Nimbin. The house is gone, the car's gone, and he's back on the street. Yeah? Or all the furniture's gone, and his mates from Nimbin are living in the house, and the neighbours are complaining that he's brought Nimbin to the house. Do you understand what I mean? And this is a very interesting moment. So I'll give an example that I love to give, which is I used to work in a really weird place in Adelaide. I worked on East Terrace. And I remember there was an IGA, just a food shop there. But it was a really weird one. East Terrace is a really weird spot because it's right next to the courthouse. And there's also the halfway house down the street, which is where all the criminals rehabilitate. But then everything else there is like a whiskey tasting bar and rich people and all the lawyers. So you've got this really weird mix of like criminals and lawyers, lowest of the low, and then like people who are just sipping whiskey, yeah? Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? And we just to be clear, this IGA that also just sold normal IGA things had a water feature and an expensive cocktail bar built into it, which I know it's very hard for you to imagine that. And then there was sorry?
What's a water feature?
Water feature, like a fountain. Well, it was actually a giant wall, like a huge window with water just constantly running down to make it look like it was raining. It was quite beautiful. It was lovely. And it was a big cocktail bar, and then at the back there was an organic butchery. Yeah, in an IGA. It's a hard moment because usually you think IGA, you think kind of like rough, but it's not. So, but I remember this guy used to come along, and this man, his name was, he introduced himself as Cactus Jack. And I remember Cactus Jack would come in, and he would come into the place, and he would roll in, and he'd come in, and he'd be in like a colourful suit, usually yellow or like a sky blue, and he'd be very sort of American in his mannerisms, but he was an Aussie. And he'd be like, "Hey there, darling," and he'd be flicking like a coin, and he's like, "Do me a favor and grab me some of those nice cigars from behind the counter." You know what I mean? And he'd get these nice thin cigars, I forget the names of them now. And he would, and then he'd bet on the Keno or whatever it was, and he'd get himself, some drinks. He'd buy a cocktail from next door. And that's how it would start. That's the first couple of days, yeah? After the third day, it becomes apparent that Cactus Jack's maybe, let's say fourth day, he's still in the same suit. And he hasn't actually changed out of it. I don't know if you've ever seen, I don't know if you've ever had like a, say, 3-day bender or something and you haven't changed clothes. Or maybe let's not say bender, let's say you're overseas, and you're going on a lovely trip of India and you haven't changed clothes for 3 days. It starts to show. But this shows more because he's sleeping on the ground. And it's like, suddenly his suit is looking pretty dirty. By the end of the week, the jacket's gone. Yeah? The jacket's just disappeared. His knees are looking pretty black. you know, and his shoes are very scuffed, you know, and he's buying cheaper tobacco, you know. Second week, this starts to go on. By second week, it's like the pants are now torn and ragged. You know, he's just wearing like a white singlet. I'm not going to use the colloquial term. And he's wearing a white singlet, and his belt's just kind of containing himself. And he's coming in and goes, oh, give me some of them ciggies, you know. And then this goes on. By the end of the second week, he's buying White Ox. Do you guys know what White Ox is?
Jailhouse tobacco.
Yeah, prison tobacco. It's nasty. It's like 6 parts poison. I think it's the same stuff as Roundup, right? It's just not. It's really bad stuff. You know, it's rough. It's rough stuff. It's strong and it's cheap. You know, not like that good quality mullen chop you get, eh? And then anyway, he was anyway. And he's starting, all these sores are starting to grow on his face. These things are growing on his face, and his skin's starting to peel off, and he's just looking, and he's getting more and more slurring every day, and he seems to be drunk all the time, and he smells horrible. And by the end of the third week, he's coming in, he doesn't even look at you, he doesn't know what's going on, and the manager is having to stand, and he's holding all the bottles of metho above his height, so that he can't grab them. He's literally like trying to grab the metho, and he's going, no, I'm sorry, Jack, you can't have the metho. And he's taking out the back. He's like, oh, come on, just fucking one bottle. Oh, mate, come on, mate. Sorry?
He's trying to drink metho.
Yeah, methylated spirits. It's got a high alcohol content. Yeah, the more you know.
Would that not kill you? Or?
Well, it says living in this living, Erika. It will kill you, but let's say so slowly and painfully that you could get away with it for a while. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so so basically this is a real story. And then this is what would happen. We just wouldn't see him for about a month. He just disappears. Gone. About a month, right? Yep, after that month, in comes Cactus Jack swinging his watch chain, clean, new suit. You know what I mean? Get me some of those cigars down there, darling, and keep a little for yourself. And this would just keep going on. Like every 2 months, you go through the full cycle. And, and new people would really suffer because they wouldn't know what's going on. And after a while, you're like, oh, he's coming in. And it's like, move the metho, move anything that looks drinkable up shelves or get it out, put it out the back. And, so what this was is obviously after a month or so, they would pick him up on the street half dead, and then they would take him through the process again. They would rehabilitate him. They'd take him into the rehabilitation house, and they'd clean him up and fix him up and wash him and help him out and give him some nice food and some nice clothes, tell him to come back in here, nice place to sleep. But obviously you're not allowed to go back in if you're pissed. So this process would just keep going. This just kept going and going and going. So you can take the person physically, and they've tried this. This has been an ongoing issue in our society of just trying to, solve things by throwing money at it or throwing, whatever, some houses at it, whatever, rather than actually re-educating the person. The person gets taken to prison. We talked about this last week, where in prison they actually learn very negative psychology, and they are taken through many horrible states or pushed through horrible lines inside themselves, and lowers their level of being. And then when they come out, they're actually a worse person inside. They're full of pain, and then they can't rehabilitate, yeah? So again, rather than actually try and solve the system at the top, we're just attacking the things at the bottom. We're not looking at the whole thing. So for that, we have to actually say that it's the interior state that actually creates the exterior state, which I guess is probably the ultimate judgment, and, day and age would be very uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not allowed to judge anyone. But here I'm saying, well, yeah, actually, the person's interior state is everything. What they're like on the inside is what's really important. So this is the level of being. And so we can say really that it is the internal that is the guide for the external. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a person, for instance, who has a good interior state is going to be financially successful or even successful with a lot of friends or anything like that, right? What it's saying is, every single person in existence exists at one or another level of being. Every person, yeah? Every man, woman, and child, everyone are on a certain rung of this great ladder. They're all functioning at a certain level. And it's, excuse me, and this is actually, okay, this does often help socially, but this sort of shows, and like as an example, you know, it's like when a person wants to enter into big business, you know, you want to join Hollywood, for instance, as an example, or you want to join, you know, the bankers who are actually really running the world and that. And even if you had a lot of money, you probably wouldn't be able to join their group because they're all on a certain level. Do you understand what I mean? They're all actually functioning on a certain level. And if you don't function on their level, they just not want to spend time with you. You're usually drawn to the people the same level of being as you. So when a person says, oh, mate, you know, I'm just surrounded by losers, well, maybe you're a loser. It's so rude, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. It's, oh, I'm surrounded by all these people who are suffering and have got problems. Well, maybe you've got a lot of suffering on the inside. If you dissolve from within yourself that feeling sorry for yourself, that pain, that sort of stuff, then the people wouldn't be drawn to you anymore. Do you see what I mean? Because they go, oh, rah, all their problems, and you just be like, oh, yeah. Not really interested in that. You know? And they don't go and tell their story to people who aren't interested. Do you understand what I mean? Because that person doesn't have that interior state. As another example, I remember a friend of mine told me about when they went traveling through, they're really into film, like studying film and stuff when they were younger. And so in the mid-2000s, they decided they were going to travel through Eastern Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like, not Prague, which is like a proper tourist destination, but like all those countries that most people don't know the name of. And they decided they were going to go through there. And so, and you know what's interesting is obviously there's a problem here, which is very little people speak English. In 2005, very little people spoke English in those areas in that time. It's actually very hard to get around. But one thing that they had no problem, sometimes she said they went to a town and they had no idea where they were. No one spoke English. They couldn't even find a place to stay. She said one night she couldn't find a place to stay. But no matter where they went, in the first day, they found weed. They found marijuana, no matter what. No matter where they went, they always found marijuana straight away because they were from Adelaide. I don't know if you know much about Adelaide, but Adelaide's got a high weed content. It's like 90% or something like that of people. You know, it's ridiculous. And you say, oh, that's ridiculous, Mick. That's not true. I grew up there. It's like everyone. It's crazy. That's why nothing gets done in Adelaide. Everyone's just stoned.
City of churches.
Yeah, and weed. You'd think because of the churches it's more like Christian, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I grew up there. There's so much marijuana. But that's not the point. What I'm trying to say, so basically, yeah, so why are they able to find the drug before even a place to stay? Because of their level of being. Do you know what I mean? Because of their level of being. Because a guy not even speaking the language. You don't even speak the language. And you're at the railway station, you're looking around, you see a guy, he sees you, you sort of look at each other, dealer. And they just know. I don't know what a dealer looks like. My idea of a dealer is just a guy from a movie, because I've never been much of a drug, I've never been into drugs really. So I just go, oh, is it that guy, you know, with the sleeked back hair? They're like, no, he's just a homosexual. I'm like, oh, sorry. What about that one over there? No, he's just dressed funny. Like, oh, okay. What am I looking for? That guy, he looks kind of quite normal, you know, because I don't know what I'm looking for. You understand what I mean? But if you have that level of being, you find it straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like I was talking in Hollywood, they know. Yeah? You can't infiltrate Hollywood with your high level of being. They're going to know. Yeah, you're going to go to their table and they're going to say, here, take some of these drugs, here. You know, debase yourself a little. And you're like, I'm not really keen on that. And they're like, cool.
See you later.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll call you back.
Yeah.
And that means it's over. And this is true. So this is what I'm trying to say. So each person exists on their own, exists on one or another level of being. And it's this level that actually dictates the life. And so in that sense, of course, there are moments where something, for instance, if a person has an extremely low level of being, like for instance, as we said before, Cactus Jack, who just can't get it together, you know, who's in this really difficult circumstance, it's because of his own interior state, yeah? And we could compare this like, you know, someone like a really sort of, a person who's really working for spiritual enlightenment or to change their psychology for the better. Like an example, there's not many public examples anymore, but like someone like the Dalai Lama or something, someone who's really working to create that joy, you feel it. Their level of being is high. It actually lifts everybody around them. I've given that example heaps of times, where you see the Dalai Lama on a political show or a MasterChef or something like that, and he just lifts the whole environment. And like people try to get him down, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work because he's got such an incredibly high level of being that he keeps it up. Do you see what I mean? And even though he doesn't have anything, he's not a rich man, he hasn't got everything, but he has this beautiful level of being inside. Now, just to demiss something, as I said, success doesn't matter. As I was giving an example, for some people, a really low level of being might mean that they're, the guy's in the park because his level of being so low, he just can't get out of it, yeah? But at the same time, only just a bit above him, yeah. There are guys, as we said, who are sipping wine and who are sipping in the whiskey bars, yeah? But their level of being is actually very low. Like as an example, those sorts of people I want to mention, but like who take advantage of children and things like that, they must have a very low level of being inside themselves, even though they have a very successful in society. And again, you say, how do these people find each other? Not just the internet, low level of being. They're able to find the other person who's on the same level as them. And so this works both ways. If I start raising my level of being, I'm going to bring to myself people and circumstances of a higher level of being, yeah? And by the same token, when I'm at a lower level of being, I'm going to be drawing more difficulties. That doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. You've got this fantastic high level of being, so you're never going to have a problem. But it means that our psychology is going to be able to deal with it. Yeah, like the Dalai Lama being a good example, had a horrible beginning to his life. Running away from the genocide being committed in China, well, then Tibet, now China. But because of his level of being, his command of his own psychology, he was able to deal with all that. And he has a joy, it's not the right word, like a force inside of himself that comes from that. A power that doesn't depend on other people. His power doesn't depend on pushing that guy down or being more important. It's just inside himself, if you understand what I mean. So, as I said, each of us exists at this level or another. And that means that there's always one rung above us and a rung below us. And yes, you could say, if we wanted to just explain it, within a level of being, there is also like a high point and a low point within a level of being, There's there's when you're doing really well and you're feeling really good and everything's going well in your psychology, you're doing your meditations and you feel fantastic, And then there's the lower point where you just, overeating and, you feel like you're at your lowest, yeah? But that's still the same level of being. We're still at that same rung, yeah? As we said. Okay. So, and before I talk about that, as I said, the higher we go up, the closer we are to our interior being, our own interior divinity. Yeah, this is the goal of raising our level of being. And the further we are away from that. In a sense, that's why you could say the low level of being even creates a sense of loneliness and pain because we're further away from the being. Yeah. So, as I was saying, so if we want to raise our level of being, this is what we need to talk about. So to raise one's level of being, we need to start practicing what's called self-observation. And that means, in a sense, as we said, to become aware of my current level of being. See, level of being, this is something we're teaching. This isn't like an initiatic thing where you'll come and be like 50, 45, 80, you know what I mean? 70, 10, you know what I mean? This isn't like that. I'm not going to tell you all what your level of being is and I'll be like 150, you guys look great down there, but I can help you up. You only need to pay me $3,000 and I can raise your level of being. It's $1 per level. But this is nonsense. I'm joking, yeah? To raise the level of being, the first thing you have to do is actually become aware of your own level of being. And that's, I guess it's a term we use in Gnosis, to use the scalpel of self-criticism, to actually be honest with ourselves. To be honest, not masochistic. honest, to see my own internal reality as it is. And no one can tell you what your level of being is, if you understand. No one can come up to you and be like, oh, it's a terrible level of being here. I don't even know why I hang out with you, you know, like, you're like right on the edge of being just too low for me to hang out with you. I just thought I'd let you know that, spiritually speaking. That's ridiculous. We must find it within ourselves, yeah? And that is going to be, of course, heavily affected by our psychology, by our egos, by the defects, by, as you said, the closeness to our interior divinity, all of these factors. But really, more than anything, it's connected to our, well, it's connected to a few. It's connected to our consciousness. It's connected to the use of the sexual energy. We've been talking a lot about that lately in the class, using the sexual energy, transmuting the sexual energy. It's connected to that. The more we transmute, the more we work with it. This helps to heighten the level of being a lot. And of course, therefore, the more negative work with that, as I was mentioning, those people who are really like, as I said, taking advantage of children, something like that, have a low level. That's because of their sexuality. It drags them down dramatically in that level. But in general, the ego itself lowers our level of being a lot, and our general lack of consciousness of our level as well. So the first thing you have to do is therefore find that level through self-observation. Yeah, I wish we had a big guru here who could tell you, but even in the times when we did have a big guru, he couldn't tell you. He told some people, I think, apparently he had an internal experience about one, he told them and they left because they were horrified. He told like one or two people, he said, oh, you have a real problem there. And they're like, oh. So even if we wanted to be told, it doesn't matter. It has to be your internal experience. Yeah, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay, so self-observation. When self-observation is done correctly, it will become a faculty of the consciousness. In the beginning, self-observation starts as mental attention. So what I'm going to teach you is an exercise of mental attention where we slowly get used to observing ourselves during the day in moments, right? When this is done properly, it won't be a mental exercise like that anymore, meaning that it'll happen naturally. You just catch yourself like that. It becomes a faculty. That's what I wanted to explain. But in the beginning, we have to create it. So how do we create it? We create self-observation through this little three-part process here, what we call subject, object, and location. And what this is breaking up our mundane life and ourselves in each moment, so that I can understand what's really going on. Because this is tricky. You know, people talk about being conscious from moment to moment, and there seems to be a really large, like very vague definition for that. Like when you say, be conscious of yourself from moment to moment, right? What does that mean? Does that mean like every second? Like, okay, I'm conscious right now. Is it breath work? Is it just because you say it? You know, kind of like when you're a Christian, I believe in Jesus, I am now saved. What counts as believing in Jesus? How deeply do you have to believe? Do you know what I mean? Where's the measurement? Where's the measurement? It's very important. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying, where's the measurement? Oh, you've been dunked. Okay, well there's a measurement. What do you call it? The Baptists have got a measurement. You go in the water and then you come out saved. Okay, that's a measurement, right? So we need to have a measurement for consciousness, if you understand what I mean. The consciousness has to be able to be measured. We'll talk about this later in the Awakening Consciousness lecture, that we can actually measure the awakening of consciousness very specifically. So so there's less of this vagueness of let's just be aware of ourselves. So when someone says let's be aware in the moment, what we're talking about is actually being conscious of these three factors in a given moment. And a given moment means one full situation. So a moment isn't a second, it's not a millisecond. It is right now and here, but it's also right now and here in this process. So when you guys came into this room, you started a new moment. That was one moment. And then when you go, or I guess when we do the meditation, that'll probably be the next moment. And then going off to your car, going home, that's going to be one moment driving home. And that's actually moment to moment. To be in each moment like that. You understand? So living from moment to moment doesn't just mean breathing and centering yourself and going, yep, I feel like I'm standing right here, right now. It means actually cooperating with the environment that I'm in each moment. Yeah, each environment. So here in this room, there's a moment. Yeah, there's myself, the subject. There's the object listening to the lecture. From my perspective, it's giving the lecture to you. Yeah, you guys, it's your here. So I have to be conscious of the people. From my perspective, conscious of the people in the room. And then the location is the environment, it's the room itself. If I come into a location here, and then I can't cooperate with the environment, then there's going to be something. There's going to be a problem, right? So if I come into this room, and I don't like the way the chairs are set up, so I decide that I'm going to come sit here next to the missionary, next to the instructor. You all look at that. It happened in a class before. I did a class like this, and a guy didn't like the chairs, so he came and sat in my chair, like up the front. It was a very odd sensation. And as I gave the lecture, he commented on the whole lecture from the position of the chair, as though we were like friends, as though as though he was backing up his mate, like he was my wingman on this lecture. It was a very strange experience. He had some stuff going on beforehand. He said he said he finished the whole path falling down a flight of stairs. He was carrying some chairs. What do you call it? The rhyme is just convenient, but he was carrying some metal chairs up some stairs, and he fell backwards, and the first chair hit him in the throat and awakened his laryngeal chakra. The second chair, it crushed, didn't just hit him, like there were steel chairs, and he was falling backwards. It actually crushed his windpipe, shattered, blood everywhere. And then the next one, yeah, I know, the next one hit his nose up into his brain and crushed and awoke his Ajna chakra, his third eye. And then the next one hit right on the top here and actually cracked open his skull and awoken his pineal gland. And then when he was sitting in hospital, he said that he was drinking his brain fluids because they were leaking into his mouth. And he said because of that, he was drinking the liquid of gold, which is a thing that they talk about in Taoism. And from the what do you call it, the golden flower, and which is actually alchemical, but let's not go there. And he had therefore experienced. I remember Kim talks about that in his lecture, the drinking of the pineal gland, and he said I awoke completely, and I was like, really? Continuing on, But you see, you're not. So in those moments, yeah, when there's an issue, if I'm observing myself, and that's something, and so usually you observe yourself when something's a bit off, yeah. You can observe yourself in the dead moments, like when you're doing the dishes or something, observe yourself and actually see that you're paying attention to what you're doing. So I look at my mind, I look at what I'm doing. So doing is the dishes, yeah? And then the environment is the kitchen, right? But where's my mind? My mind's like, oh man, I'm so depressed. I'm tired. I'm itchy. I've got to sort that thing out for tomorrow. I'm hungry. Maybe I should make more food. Don't make more food. You're fat. You actually need to go on a diet. You're like, oh, I don't want to go on a diet. I hate diets and stuff. I just want to eat some chocolate. You can't have chocolate. Your teeth are all stuffed. Oh, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's too hard. I hate doing this. And then, but you're just, while you're doing the dishes, you're just feeling, before you observe yourself, you're doing the dishes completely mechanically. You're completely asleep. The consciousness is dreaming. It's off. Yeah, it's off over there somewhere. It's off thinking about sugar, or it's off doing that. We're not just concentrating, breathing, relaxing, focusing on what I'm doing, and actually, working to keep the mind a little bit clear, right? That's what I'm saying. So there's the dead moment. The other one is when we actually have a problem. So if we're in a situation, and I feel uncomfortable, something's wrong. Like there's maybe there's an altercation. We're having an argument with somebody. And so I observe myself, subject, object, location. So I go, right now, okay, this person's having a go at me, okay. I'm just sitting here, they're doing nothing, you know what I mean? Location, I'm in the lecture, sitting at the front while he's trying to give a lecture. Why is he yelling at me? This guy's obviously got a problem. No, you're not cooperating with the environment. I had this happen once. I gave a lecture, one of the first times I gave a lecture at Burleyheads. And Burleyheads was, at that time, affordable. And I remember I was giving a lecture, and a bunch of ladies came in and wore their nice yoga. They even had yoga mats, actually, and their yoga attire. I gave a talk, and it was a long room. It was kind of the same as this, but situated the other way. The board was at the end, and it went like that, and there was like rows of 4 chairs, about 5 rows deep. And one guy came and sat at the back on the left. Yeah, Hamish, can you just turn that light off? One guy came and sat on the back of the left, like all the way down there, like there. And then these other women, they didn't want to sit in the chairs. So they went and took the cushions off the chairs and then sat up against the wall on the ground. And so I'm trying to give a lecture, and it's like, I'm like looking, hi, yes, hello, and then, yes, this is what we're talking about. Yes, yeah, here we go. It's like we've lost the cooperation. It's like the person set some chairs out for you to sit down, and you go and take some chairs and sit somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? I'm feeling the beat of my own drum. I'm on my own journey, and I got to sit where I feel. Come, just sit in the chair, man. You know what I mean? Same thing. It's like you're trying. Let's say you're trying to give up drinking alcohol. Alcohol, drugs, they lower level of being horrible. Yeah. So you're trying to give this sort of stuff up, and you find yourself, right? You look at the subject-object location. You're going, I'm feeling inside my mind a strong desire to drink a beer right now. Very strong. Interesting. So we have a look around. Yep, the strong desire. Who's around? My friends are all around me. Okay, they like drinking. Okay, well, that's fine. I can just hang around. I don't need to drink. But where are you? You're at the pub. What are you doing? I like the meals. Come on, man. You're trying to give up booze. You're just going to have to stay out of there for a while. That's the reality. But you see, this is what I mean. So sometimes it can actually be, when I observe myself, I start to realize, what am I doing here? I'm not, in this situation, I'm in the wrong environment, I'm in the wrong location, yeah? Or in the other situation, I'm not cooperating with it. So the reality is, if I'm standing at the pub and telling everyone not to drink, there's a problem. I don't go to the pub and lecture Gnosis. I don't stand up on the beautiful wooden bar and say, listen up, everybody. I'm going to tell you about awakening consciousness. Do you know what I mean? No, because that's rude. They're just trying to enjoy the end of their day. They just want to have a beer and go home. They don't care. Why would I do that? Do you understand what I mean? So it's the wrong location. So this is what I mean. So I observe myself, I observe my environment, and I observe the people around me and the objective, like the purpose of why I'm there. And I divide my attention and actually have a look. Now, most of the time, when you're observing yourself, the issue is going to be in here, in the subject. Yeah. Most of the time, it's going to be the way of thinking that's got a problem. As I said, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm suddenly feeling upset. Why? I spent the whole day scrolling my phone, looking at advertisements for whatever, better phones or nicer houses. And now I'm not happy and not happy with my own house. Yeah? Do you see what I mean? So this is what it means to start self-observing. To start being aware of my psychology from moment to moment, being aware of the ego, the human machine. Human machine we'll talk about in another, that's 2 or 3 lectures away, which is just basically our whole bit of intellect, emotion, instinct, sex, all the different things that make us up. The different energies that run through the body. To observe those in a moment and to actually be aware of what's moving through them. So, in that sense, if I begin to just observe myself from moment to moment, yeah, and you don't have to do this all the time, but as I said, we start off actually breaking it up and beginning to look at these different things, and it becomes more natural, and we'll do it more naturally. We'll start to become more aware of the environment that I'm in, more aware of the people around me, more aware of my own psychology, my own mind, the way that it's interfering in just the practical matters of life, yeah, interfering in the things I'm dealing with people, interfering in the environment around me, the people, the place, the location. Now, the more I do that, what's going to happen is I'm going to see the things that are actually a hindrance to the level of being. Do you understand? I'm not telling you to just go out and give up absolutely everything. Yeah, that's the problem, If we were to do that moralistically, we would just bounce back. Yeah. If I were to go out and try and just eliminate all of my defects without really observing them, this is the issue that happens very often when someone joins like a religion and they get told all the bad things. Here's the new list of bad things. Thou shalt not look at thy neighbor's wife. You know what I mean? That's it. Yeah, and you just go, that's a bad thing. I won't do that anymore. How you going, George? Good. Hi. Yeah, don't talk to me, Cindy. Yeah. And you just push away, and eventually you're just going to swing back because it's what's called the law of the pendulum. Yeah, everything just goes that way, and if you push too hard to one side, you flip back. So if you're not living in balance, you're just going to eventually flip back. You say it all the time. You see the same thing where the person becomes fundamentally religious and then they flip back the other way and end up being completely like losing the plot. And then vice versa. A person goes to the deepest depths of hedonism and then flips back and becomes completely religious, yeah? Both of these things don't really change a person, yeah? And all they do is sort of contain it within themselves. So if I actually start making it a habit of observing my psychology, observing my internal state, yeah, this is how we change. If I look at myself after the road rage incident and I see a negative internal state inside myself, I have to start to eliminate that. Understand it and begin to dissolve that from within myself. Yeah, if I have, as I said, the feeling low inside myself and then I see desire, 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. You know, you go, oh God, you know, I'm just upset. I just don't like my car anymore. It's okay. So how many nice cars have you been seeing on the road and advertisements for new cars that have made you dislike your perfectly fine old car? I actually saw a guy today do the opposite. There was a guy driving around town. There's a guy around town who's got an old Datsun.
A Datsun.
Yeah. Do you remember a Datsun? It's an old car, mate. Yeah. But it's like a 70s Datsun. Like I remember these when I was growing up with Dad. It's like an old a Ute. But it's like the look. Like I actually reckon this car's probably worth a fortune. And it's like, but it's totally trash. Like every panel is covered in rust, but he's done that thing where he's paint sealed the rust. So he's sealed the rust. So it's got the look, and the guy's like, he's got like a surfy hair, but if you look really carefully, you realize that every lock is carefully curled, you know what I mean? Like there's no dreads in there, mate. You're like, it's all very careful, you know. And then I was sort of looking at the surfboard and the brand. I'm like, that's actually a very expensive board. You know what I mean? This guy's not just, and it's not casually thrown in there. It's like, it looks casually thrown in there, but there's like a special thing. So when you drop it in, it looks casually thrown in, but there's actually like a thing to hold it in with special foam and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? You know, but it's a whole look. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to reverse that. You know, you think, oh, I need a new car. Well, look at this guy. He's going to huge efforts to keep an old car. And I know how hard it is. I'm trying to find parts for my bloody 98 Hiace and I can't find the door glider. Yeah, and this guy, I'm thinking, wow, he's running a 70s Datsun. You know, how many backyards in rough areas is he digging around old Datsuns trying to find parts? You know? Because people don't even have them broken down their front yard anymore, like the old days. You know, or is it a Tirana? Do you remember, is it the 90s where you had a broken down Tirana in your front yard? Everywhere in Adelaide had one. I mean in the rough burbs, not in the nice wine drinking suburbs, the goon suburbs. There's 2 parts of Adelaide. There's people who drink wine and people who drink goon. There you go, city of churches. There's no 2. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say here is that if I change this interior level inside myself, this is what's going to enact real change inside. This is what's going to enact real change outside. This is how my life is really going to change. Nothing in here is really going to make a big difference. Like I remember, do you know those like reality TV shows where someone goes and gets like a makeover? You know, like it'll be like, she'll be like, I don't know, it'll be like a mum or something. And she's like, oh, it's so hard. I have to look after the kids all day and I'm so tired and, you know, I'm exhausted and I'm chubby and I don't know what to do with myself anymore. And then they take her and you know, it's like 4 gay men sort of take her into a special spa and they do her nails and then they kind of like, you know, they do anything. I think we could do something. I think we could really do something here. You know, they do something with her hair and they dye it with all these special things. And then, you know, they go and buy her a new dress or something. And then, you know, she walks in, you know, and her husband's sitting on the couch. I love the Australian versions of those because they're always never very good. Like the American ones, in America, everyone's good at false emotions. But like in Australia, it never quite works. And we go, oh, wow. It's just crap. Like in America, like, wow, man, whoa, she's totally different. You know, wow, it's amazing, darling. You look amazing. But like in Australia, it's just like, oh, yeah. So she comes in. You know, she's like that, and they've got like they've got the light on her, and they've got the fan blowing her in the face, and she like walks through the door, you know what I mean? And everyone goes, can you believe that's your mum? And they're like, nah, I've got no idea. I can't believe that's our mum. Wow. And he goes, wow, she's totally different. You know what I mean? And it's like, not really. Like, not really. Do you know what I mean? It's just the same person. You've just put a fresh coat of paint. But I don't mean to I don't mean it like that. That came off pretty rough. But you know what I mean? Like I often have to go to houses, like, because I'm a handyman, I constantly fix stuff, and the amount of times that we go to a house and they just get this property that's just run down, literal cockroaches in the walls, and they just put a coat of paint on, change the carpets, and put a blinds and new fans, and they're like, there you go, $1,200 a week. And the rent before was like $600. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is the thing. So all these changes don't matter. When you die, you can't take all your money or all your friends, or because people say that, they go, oh yeah, mate, I lived a good life, I had lots of good mates, and yeah, it's a good life, yeah. That's fine. But what's actually going to travel with you is this. This is what comes from life to life, yeah? Yeah. This is why it can even happen. You can have, two children grow up in the exact same circumstance. Yeah? Same dad. Like, I remember a friend of mine said that. A friend of mine was like that. Him and his brother grew up, and they had a East German father. Came out right after the war. And he was a hard man. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he was talking to me once, and every time I talked to him, he would blame his father for all his problems. Every time. He'd go, oh, mate, if only I'd had such a good father like yours, and rah, rah. It'd be fantastic. Do you guys remember last class when I was talking about how, like, my parents let me, like, as a toddler as a baby, I crawled out in front of traffic. Anyway. And he said, oh, I wish I had this. And my mum got yelled at by the lady. What's wrong with you? But, oh, if only I'd, had all the chances you had, and la, 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 la. And then one time he let it slip. He goes, yeah, anyway, every time I mention it to my brother, he tells me just to get over it. He said, I grew up the same as you and I'm fine. He said, yeah, Dad, hit us, but we were little shits. We had it coming, mate. Like, come on. He's like, we set the flipping bin on fire and we did this. And he starts telling me what they did. I'm like, geez, you guys were rough. He's like, you got that girl pregnant and this sort of stuff. He's like, yeah, of course he beat you for that. And it's just like, oh, now we see the other side, So, we're blaming all the situations, but it doesn't, I said, you can have two people and go through the exact same situations, and yet that doesn't necessarily determine that person who came into that family might have already had a higher level of being, born with a higher level of being, able to deal with a lot more and transform those impressions due to the naturally already high level of being, and vice versa, born with a naturally low level of being. You know what I mean? Already from the last life. Remember, we used to have our friend, we had that young boy, Ruby, who he used to, every woman he sat next to, they just felt a bit creeped out from the age of 3, And he'd just sort of sit there and he just put his arm around you. He's 3 and look at your chest, And his brother wasn't like that at all. His brother completely different. His dad wasn't like that at all. You know what I mean? No, nothing at all. Where'd he get it from? He was an old lech at the age of 3. I remember his own mother said, I felt uncomfortable showering in front of him. I felt uncomfortable. Usually with a child, they're completely pure. There's nothing. But she got out of this. The way he looked at me when I go to the shower, she's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I just don't feel comfortable. That's the level of being. He's carrying over from his previous life, his low level of being. Yeah. That's why I was saying you have two people, same situation, same everything. It's the level of being that's important. Do we want the perfect life or the perfect psychology? We want the perfect psychology. From that, I can deal with everything. It doesn't matter what happens in my life. Because of my psychology, I can transform those impressions. I can deal with that situation. So, as a Gnostic, one of our goals is to raise this level of being. The practice of meditation, the practice of self-observation, the practice of the dissolution of the ego, the various works of prayer, etc. All of these things help to slowly raise level of being. Another thing that works really well is also to surround yourself with impressions of a higher nature. So things that actually help raise level of being are things like classical art, classical music, things like this too. They actually work to raise the level of being. They actually require like effort. Like I remember when I taught in the Gold Coast, I taught all these young guys came, they're like 19 and stuff, and they had to learn to like listening to classical music. because it was like an effort, you know what I mean? But after a while, and it's the same thing. They've done heaps of studies to show this is the case. Yeah, that it affects people very positively. But the same thing, these things help you. But they require of you effort, because you have to raise your level to meet the level of the music. Do you know what I mean? And the same thing, you have to raise your level. Like as an example, all the beautiful classical literature and all this sort of stuff is designed to raise the level of being as well. This classical literature is actually designed to make you introspect. When you read the beautiful stories of Homer and Ovid and these things, they actually are supposed to talk about the archetypes and the psychology, and it helps you to reflect. And they're hard to read because they require you to reflect as you read them. You have to observe yourself. It's not supposed to be easy, you know. Stuff that's easy is the opposite. Remember, what's the term? Is it brain rot? Brain rot, just stuff that actually destroys you, but it just makes it worse and you want to consume more of it, just looking at crap on your phone. It actually does the opposite. It slowly just degenerates the brain. Yeah? It degenerates. It's better to say it slowly lowers level of being, let's be honest. And that's what that does. And so, and you see that, you know, if I keep, you know, if a man, for instance, just keeps looking at very lustful images over and over and over again, you will see it will sort of slowly start to drop that level. Slowly start to drop that level. You know, and I've caught myself even sometimes before looking at just nonsense. Just not like that brain rotty sort of stuff, just silly things, you know, and I feel it just drop my whole level. You know, you go to communicate with someone goes to ask me an important Gnostic question. I'm like, you want to see this funny picture? Look, it's a dog. You know, you see what I mean? It lowers you. It takes you to the lower part of your level, yeah? And so I actually have a responsibility as an instructor, as someone who wants to teach these mysteries, to keep my level of being high so I can help other people. Yeah? Not so I can be Mr. Fantastic, but so I can help other people raise their level of being. So these things help too. There are many things, I said, classical literature, all this stuff, helps to slowly raise that level, you know? The arts, that's why it's quite beautiful. It's interesting, you know, my father's teaching in UK, and like, you know, UK is like full, chockers full of art. You know, it's amazing, you know. And my father, you know, he's you know, he meditates for hours every day and works on himself a lot. He has a relatively high level of being, of course. And he loves all this stuff. He finds himself going into the churches and standing for a long time looking at the beautiful pieces of art. But most people aren't interested in them at all, because level of being's too low. You know, so you just go in and go, oh yeah. You know, like you go, it's like this. You imagine this guy, like as an example, like, you know, some of the stuff that Da Vinci did took him, what was it, the Last Supper was like 7 years or something like that to do. He did, the Mona Lisa, he carried it with him his whole life, and he never even felt like he finished it. And we just look over and go, oh, yep, that's done. Just put that away. Yeah, it's like, people used to sit and like observe it and be like, wow. And they're not like looking at the brush strokes. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good stroke over there. You know, like the way, it's kind of round. Maybe you used like a sort of fan brush to do that one. What they're looking at is the beauty of it. It's talking to the superior emotional center. You know what I mean? It's imbued with the consciousness of the man who painted it. The person who painted its level of consciousness is imbued within the picture. And by the same rote, every piece of art is imbued by the person who made it. Which is why now you look at a lot of art and it kind of drags you down, because the person's level of being is low. A lot of these TV things you watch and it just drags you down because the person's level is that. You know, like when you see something, you go, oh, that's kind of nasty. Like you see a trailer for a movie, and that just looks horrible. What about the guy who made it? Like he must have been in a really, you know, like I remember reading something once, I can't remember, it's like a short story, and it was just so depressing and primal and grotesque, and I thought, wow, how must the person feel inside themselves who wrote it? You know, interesting, isn't it? You know. So yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the one of the key points of Gnosis, to try and lift this level of being, to raise our internal level inside of ourselves. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions about this or Gnosis in general?
Can you recommend some good music?
Recommend some good music. Well. Yes, I have a real love for good music. If you want to start off easy, you can't go wrong with Beethoven. You can never go wrong with Beethoven because it's so beautiful. There's nothing... Listening, like for instance, I was actually told in a dream once to listen to Beethoven's symphonies, like meditate on them, sit there for half an hour and just listen to the symphony and let it wash over me to help raise my emotional center because my emotions were so low, from a long time in my teens of growing up and just watching violent films. I'd like damage my emotions, and so that actually helped a lot in just sort of slowly lifting that up,
Do you find it's different on vinyl?
Pardon?
Do you find it's different on vinyl?
Yeah, of course. 100%. I have a bit of a soft spot for vinyl, but that's also my father, and he has a way of kind of having impressed that upon most people he meets. It's a bit of an effort though to go the vinyl route, because it's like what I like about the vinyl is that one, it's not digital, so it's lossless, so you're not getting like an inaudible crackle behind, so it's actually nicer for the emotional center to listen to music that way. Yeah, that's right. And it's nice having something physical. It can be a bit tricky. But at the same time, get your Bluetooth speaker, hook it up to YouTube on your phone, through the Bluetooth connection, and just play a little bit of Beethoven. YouTube Beethoven's greatest hits. But they're all lovely. Beethoven, Tchaikovsky is nice, but it's very bouncy, very intense, a bit hard to meditate to, like 1812 is intense, but depends. Mozart's relaxing, just plinky, like a little plink, But it's good for the emotions, I'm not saying you can't listen to any of the music, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it has a fantastic effect on the emotional center. All of these things are something that we need to find inside ourselves. It's not a new belief structure I'm giving you. I'm telling you to go home and try it for yourself. Work to raise the level of being.
It's a bit like the story of people going to the opera that can't even understand what's being said. And they'll just be really emotionally affected by it.
Yes, that's right. I know exactly that because I never know what they're talking about. So, I asked my friend once because he's German, and we went to go and see, what are we going? We went to see something. It was The Flying Dutchman, Wagner. And I was like, what do you think? And he's like, I can't understand. I'm like, but it's in German. And he's like, the way they're singing, you can't understand it in your own language. You've got to use the thing. Like it's, you can't understand. Then I saw an opera it was an Australian opera. I was about to say in Australian, Oi! There's one of the best versions of the Magic Flute is actually done by the Australian opera. It's really good. In the 80s, 90s, 90s, 80s, really good. Yeah, the kids love it, But yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't always understand what they're saying. Yeah, but there's a real beauty there. You know what I mean? There's a real beauty there, and that's what's interesting about that is like even the people who sort of often are sort of like associated with that, they may not have the highest level of being, but it actually keeps them up a bit. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying that person's just fully high level of being just because they listen to classical music all the time. Of course, they have their issues, their problems, etc., their vices, but often not nearly as bad because just listening to that, not removing all my other vices, still lifts it up a lot. As an example, I remember hearing a testimonial on Classical FM, and it was about a guy, and he was talking about how he had been to jail because of road rage multiple times, like really bad. So he's obviously from Queensland. Yeah, he's obviously from. Just kidding. And he said that he didn't know what to do, and then finally one counsellor just said, "Why don't you listen to classical music, mate? It will relax you." Because he said, like, "What are you listening to when you're driving?" And he's like, "Oh, just Slipknot, yeah, just heavy stuff." But even in general, no, they told him not to. But eventually, he said, "Okay, specifically classical," and he said it saved his license and his marriage because he stopped fighting with people just by putting that on. He said in the beginning, yeah, it didn't, and then after a while, he's like, "Oh, I actually really like this. It makes me feel happy, for no reason, as opposed to where you listen to like all that emo music, it just makes you feel sad for no reason." Do you know what I mean? You listen to music. Why? I think I'm just a bit sad. Why? What's the music? When I slip my wrists in the darkness, I don't know what's gonna happen when I die. I'm so depressed. Mom won't give me a new car. Sorry. Anyway. Okay. Chopin's good. I was playing Chopin when he came in. Are you guys ready for a practice meditation?